It started like any other morning. An old man stepped out of a faded blue truck, slow, steady, quiet. They looked at him. They saw worn boots, a tired cap, wrinkled skin, and a limp. They didn't see the man who once led Marines through ambushes in the jungle. They just saw someone in the way. One of them laughed. Another one pushed. He fell hard. Didn't cry out. Didn't ask why. Just stared at the sky like it had something to tell him. 30 miles away, someone else's phone lit up. An old number. No message. Just a name. The kind you don't ignore. The pavement was still damp from last night's rain when Raymond Delaney pulled into the corner lot of Manny's Auto Mart. His truck, a 1972 Ford F-100, rust creeping up from the wheel wells, coughed twice before going quiet. Raymond sat for a moment, hands still on the wheel. The early light painted silver streaks through the cracked windshield. He reached over, lifted his cap from the dashboard, a faded Marine Corps insignia barely holding on, and placed it gently on his head. Then, cane in hand, he opened the door. His left leg dragged slightly. Not much, just enough to make every third step uneven. He moved the way old oak trees bend in windstorms, slow but unbroken. A boy on a bike zoomed past, shouting something at his friends. They didn't look at Raymond. No one ever did. Not really. He walked past the glass storefront of the shop, catching his reflection. Thin, stooped. His shoulders weren't what they used to be, but his eyes were sharp. That hadn't changed. Inside, a young man behind the counter glanced up. Barely. "Need fuel and a quart of oil," Raymond said, voice low, steady. The kid nodded without smiling. "Pump 4. Oil's on aisle 2. Raymond reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded card. Veteran discount. The kind most clerks barely register. This one didn't either. "That doesn't work here," the boy muttered, already typing into the screen. Raymond nodded once, didn't argue. He counted out exact change. Every coin had a place, nothing wasted. Not anymore. Back outside, he moved toward the pump. The early light cast long shadows. His truck waited, loyal but tired. Like him. That's when he heard the laughter. 3 of them. Leather jackets, tattoos, 2 loud voices. Young enough to think they were untouchable, old enough to know better. "Yo, Gramps," one called out. "You drive that coffin on wheels?" Raymond said nothing. He kept walking. The rubber tip of his cane clicked against the pavement. Another one added, "Look at this guy. Vietnam, right? Or was it Korea? You even remember?" Laughter. Raymond's hand trembled slightly as he reached for the gas cap, not from fear, from restraint. They circled closer. One of them walked up behind him. "Hey, old-timer, that truck got a working engine? Or just ghosts?" Raymond turned his head slightly. "Still runs." That was all he said. Nothing else. No threat, no pride. But it was enough. The tallest one stepped forward, pushed Raymond hard on the shoulder. He hit the ground with a grunt. Elbow scraped, hip jarring. The cane clattered beside him. No one helped. No one yelled. Just footsteps walking away, one of them muttering, "Should have stayed home, fossil." Raymond didn't speak. He didn't curse. He didn't even look angry. He just sat there, hand on his knee, watching the sun rise above the hardware store across the street. Then slowly, he stood. Every motion hurt, but not the kind you show. He dusted off his pants, picked up his cane, and climbed back into the truck. The engine sputtered once, then settled into its familiar idle. He didn't look back at the boys. He didn't look at the clerk watching through the window. He just drove. The tires hummed on the road like an old song no one listens to anymore. The engine coughed again as Raymond turned off Parkside Avenue and rolled into the lot of Brody's Auto Repair. The building was squat and square, with an old Pepsi sign that hadn't lit up in years. A cracked garage door groaned halfway open. He pulled in slow, parked under a patch of shade, and killed the engine. Inside, the clang of metal echoed. Wrench on steel, loud music from a phone speaker. The smell of oil, sweat, and burnt coffee hung thick in the air. Raymond sat for a moment, gathering himself. Then he stepped out. His boot hit the pavement with a dull thud. He steadied his weight on the cane and limped toward the open bay. A young mechanic, maybe 25, looked up from under the hood of a Toyota. His name tag said Zane. His beard was scruffy. His hands were clean. Too clean for someone supposedly working. Raymond cleared his throat. "Morning." Zane didn't answer at first. Just looked him over. The cane, the truck, the cap. "Can I help you?" "Engine rattles when I push past 30. Could be the timing, could be a loose bracket. Thought I'd get it checked." Zane wiped his hands slowly. "What year is that truck?" "72. Zane let out a short laugh. "They still let those on the road?" Raymond didn't smile. "She's seen more roads than most." Zane shrugged. "We don't work on antiques, man, especially not ones that might fall apart on the lift. I'll pay in cash. I just need someone to look. Not worth it. Parts are impossible to find. Time-consuming, liability." Raymond nodded once, slowly. Understood. He didn't argue. He never did. From behind a shelf of brake pads, someone else watched. A woman, maybe mid-40s, dark braid down her back, gray smudge across one cheek. Her uniform read, Melissa. She was sweeping near the restroom quietly, just watching. Zane had already turned back to his engine. Raymond adjusted his cap. "Appreciate your time." He turned to leave. Then Melissa stepped forward. "You served?" Raymond paused. "Long time ago." "Vietnam?" He nodded. She hesitated. "My uncle never came back. Your patch looks like the one he wore." Raymond didn't respond, but he met her eyes. For a second, something passed between them. Not a conversation, just an understanding. Then he opened the truck door. As he settled into the seat, his hip screamed. The wound from earlier had stiffened. Still, he made no sound. Melissa approached the door frame. "They didn't know," she said softly. "I'm used to that," Raymond replied. "Most people don't want to." Zane looked over, frowning. "You need something, Mel?" She didn't answer. Raymond nodded to her, a silent thank you, then started the truck. It rattled, just like he'd said, but it still moved. As he backed out, Melissa stepped onto the pavement, the broom still in her hand, forgotten. Zane muttered something and went back to work. Raymond turned onto the road, the sun now higher in the sky. The world bustled. Traffic lights blinked, phones in hands, music in cars. And somewhere between the cracks of all that noise, he felt the weight of something old and heavy pressing against his ribs. Not pain, not just that. A sense that maybe it wasn't about being hurt anymore. It was about being dismissed. Raymond parked the truck behind his small house at the edge of town. The gravel crunched softly beneath the tires. Birds chirped somewhere behind the cedar fence, but the sound barely registered. The pain in his hip had deepened, but it wasn't the pain that brought him to stillness. It was the silence. He sat there a while, engine off, window rolled down, the late morning breeze carrying scents of cut grass and engine oil. The world moved outside, but inside the cab, it felt like the day had stalled. Eventually, he reached under the seat. From a weathered metal box, he pulled out a folded cloth pouch. Inside, a photo, black and white, edges curled. 6 men, shoulder to shoulder, gear muddy, grins tired and real. Echo Company, Da Nang, 71, scrawled in faded ink across the bottom. Beneath that, a small laminated card, yellowed, creased, still intact. On it, Unit Echo, direct line, emergency only, no questions, a number, no names, no rank, just a thread to the past. Raymond stared at it. He had never used it. Not when his wife died, not after the heart surgery. Not even when the mortgage almost sank him. But this wasn't about surviving anymore. This was about not disappearing. Inside the house, the hallway clock ticked loudly. The kitchen faucet dripped. A dog barked 2 houses down. All familiar. All empty. He took a breath and walked inside. The landline sat dusty on the side table. He unplugged it. Instead, he opened a drawer and pulled out a battered flip phone. Burnt orange, cracked on the corner. No internet, no apps, just numbers. He sat on the couch, held the card in one hand, the phone in the other. The number had been burned into his mind the day his CO handed it to him, decades ago. "If the world ever forgets who we were," the captain had said, "you call this. You don't explain. You just say your name." He stared for a while. His thumb hovered over the keypad. Then he dialed. 1 ring, 2, 3. Then, Secure line. Verify caller. He swallowed. Staff Sergeant Raymond Delaney, he said. Echo Company, Operation Harvest Road, 1971. A pause. Then the voice, sharper now. Hold. The line clicked. Silence. He almost thought they'd hung up until a deeper voice came through. Warm, familiar, heavy with years. Delaney. Raymond blinked. Colonel Foster? Still breathing, the man replied. You wouldn't be calling unless... Raymond cut in softly. It's not for me. It's the town. It's slipping. The way they look at men like me. Like we never mattered. Have you ever known someone like Raymond? Someone the world stopped noticing, but who carried more truth than anyone realized. Share it in the comments. These stories live longer when we remember together. There was a pause. Then only 3 words. Message received. Stand by. The line went dead. Raymond closed the phone, stared at the ceiling. He didn't know if they'd come. Didn't expect them to. But for the first time in years, he let himself hope that somewhere, in garages and workshops and quiet porches across the country, a few old hands were moving. Not for revenge, not for drama. Just to remind the world, some men don't need a stage to be seen. They just need a reason to rise. It started with a black SUV. It turned the corner of Main Street just after 3 p.m., and its paint dull with dust, tires humming low against the pavement. No markings, no sirens, just presence. It parked across from Holloway Park, under the shade of a maple tree. The engine cut, and nothing moved. Then came another, from the opposite direction. Then a third. By the time the 5th pulled in, the park's edges had quietly changed. Not a perimeter, a formation. Raymond sat on his usual bench. Same cap, same cane, same old truck parked nearby. He didn't look up. He didn't need to. The timing, the positioning, the silence, it all spoke fluently to him. They had come. Doors opened, not with urgency, but with practiced control. Out stepped men in their late 60s, 70s, some gray-haired, some bald, a few still broad-shouldered under plain jackets. No uniforms, no commands, but they moved like soldiers. Each wore the same faded black t-shirt beneath whatever civilian layer covered it. A white falcon, wings wide, inside a rusted ring of stars. Echo Company. A jogger slowed. A mother called her kids closer. A teenager stopped bouncing his basketball. The air thinned. Then, just like before, the sound of engines, sharp, juvenile, shattered the stillness. The 3 bikers from the gas station tore into the park, revving, spinning donuts near the playground. Laughter echoed. Grass flew. One of them noticed the line of parked SUVs. Then the men. The laughter died. The lead biker slowed his engine, scowled. What the hell is this? He looked at Raymond, still seated, then at the men now standing between him and the bench. From the group, a tall figure stepped forward. Trim beard, eyes like scorched iron. He walked with the posture of someone who'd earned every scar. He stopped in front of Raymond. Staff Sergeant Delaney, he said, voice clear, strong. Echo Company reporting as requested. Raymond looked up, blinked once. Colonel Foster, he whispered. You really came. The colonel turned to the others. We don't leave our own. No applause, no dramatics. The men fanned out casually without orders. Like instinct, like breath. The bikers froze. One, the youngest, barely more than a boy, took a step back. The leader, the same one who'd shoved Raymond, squared his shoulders. This some kind of joke? Colonel Foster didn't respond. He turned, facing the slowly growing crowd now watching from across the park. Phones out, faces curious. He spoke, not loud, but every word cut through the air. You laid hands on Staff Sergeant Raymond Delaney, decorated Marine, Purple Heart, Silver Star. 11 confirmed saves in active combat. He didn't fight back, not because he couldn't, but because real strength never needs to. If you believe dignity like that deserves to be remembered, subscribe. Because some stories deserve more than a headline. They deserve to be passed on. A silence, heavy and deep. One biker scoffed, but his voice trembled. That's just some old guy. Another veteran stepped forward. A man with dark skin, short white curls, and a steady gaze. He held up a chain. Dog tags. I carried his body weight and mine through the jungle because of what he did, the man said. That old guy made sure I got home. That's why I met my son. Murmurs stirred through the crowd. A young girl near the fountain removed her hat. A man followed suit, then another. The biker leader's smirk faltered. Eyes flicking to the phones now pointed at him. The public was watching, and this time, memory had teeth. He muttered, "We didn't know." Colonel Foster's eyes narrowed. "That's the problem," he said quietly. "You didn't want to." By nightfall, the story had moved faster than the sun. What began as a quiet gathering in the park had rippled outward, through messages, posts, and hushed conversations. "Did you hear what happened? The old guy at Holloway? Turns out he's a war hero." By 7 p.m., the community center overflowed. No flyers, no broadcast, just word of mouth and a sense that something needed to be said. The folding chairs filled fast. Others stood against the walls, still in work boots, aprons, and uniforms. Some had passed Raymond 100 times and never looked twice. Now, they couldn't look away. Raymond sat in the front row. A fresh shirt borrowed from the custodian. His old Marine cap rested on his lap, his hands folded gently over it. Behind him, Echo Company sat like a wall of stone. Not guards, not soldiers, brothers. Mayor Keegan stepped to the front. A woman in her 50s with calloused palms and tearful eyes. She cleared her throat. For decades, Raymond Delaney walked our streets, pumped his own gas, sat alone on that park bench, and we never saw him. A hush fell. No coughs, no whispers, just the sound of shame. We didn't know we were walking past someone who once ran toward bullets to carry others out, who returned from war not demanding honor, but quietly giving it. She turned to Raymond. "We failed to recognize you, not just as a veteran, but as a man of silent dignity." A pause, then she stepped aside. A young officer in uniform approached, holding a wooden box. He opened it carefully. "Sir," he said, "the Department of Defense confirmed your Silver Star was never officially replaced after its loss in 1989. With their authorization, we present this." He held it out. Raymond looked down at the medal. The polished silver gleamed under the soft light, but his voice remained quiet. "I didn't keep it for the medal," he said. "I kept it for what it reminded me of, who we were, what we didn't leave behind." From the back of the room, a boy stepped forward, the same one who had once seen the park incident from a distance. He held wildflowers clumsily gathered. "My granddad was in Vietnam, too," he whispered. "He'd have been proud of you." Raymond reached out and took the flowers, resting a hand on the boy's shoulder. "Then honor him," he said, "by seeing the ones others don't." A long silence followed, not uncomfortable, reverent. Outside, the town had changed. Raymond's truck now sat with a new shine. Someone had scrubbed the rust, touched up the red, hammered out the dents. A bumper sticker had been added, carefully aligned beneath the license plate. "Proud veteran, still standing." He didn't ask who did it. He didn't need to. The next morning, neighbors who had once walked past now nodded. A teenager waved. Melissa, from the garage, left a small jar of coffee on his porch with a note. "We're still learning. Thank you for your patience." Later that afternoon, Colonel Foster pulled into the drive. Not in a black SUV, just an old sedan. No formality, just presence. He stepped out and looked at Raymond, who sat on the porch with his cane resting beside him. "You all right?" the colonel asked. Raymond looked at the sky. Blue, cloudless, quiet. "I think so," he said. Foster nodded. "You never really fell, Ray. We just forgot to look up." They stood together a while, two soldiers, far from the jungle, far from the noise, but still standing. If this story stayed with you, there's another you need to hear. About a young woman named Maya, whose mother's name was erased from the history books until one silent moment rewrote everything. Watch it next.